Hello, it's ukulele time. I'm Ben Eagle, Reader's Advisory Library Aide at Carnegie-Stout. You might recognize me from the recommendations desk, the desk on the first floor by the DVDs, where I recommend all sorts of things, from books to movies to music, anything else you're looking for in the library. But I also do programming, and one of those programs is ukulele lessons. So while we're sheltering in place, I figured I'd bring the lessons to you where you're at. The library started circulating ukuleles at the end of 2019. Though they're not available while the library's closed right now, you can check them out. They're for adults with city resident cards. You get them for 2 weeks, and they come with a tuner like this. This isn't one of them, this one's mine. But it's going to be the same size, a soprano ukulele, which is one of these smaller ones, or the smallest size of a ukulele. Comes with this tuner, this clip-on tuner, one just like it, and a hardshell case, and a beginner's instruction book. Some of the stuff we go through today, the book will go over too. So, as we go farther, and if you check one of those out, those would be a good refreshment. So what we'll cover today is what I cover in my very first lesson. And that's if you're brand new to the ukulele, we cover the names of the strings and how to tune them. So that's the first part. Second part of the lesson is going to be learning the very beginner's chords that you learn when you're playing the ukulele. I have 4 chords that we'll go through, and I'll show you the best way to play those chords. So, hope you enjoy. Tuning the ukulele. The ukes at the library come with one of these. This is a kind of standard clip-on tuner. They look like this. This one is on now. You turn it on. This one, the brand is called Snark. I think the ones at the library are the same or very similar. If you have your own ukulele, you might have one of these too. This is the tuner. Okay, and then the sheet on the screen is going to tell you what strings you're tuning. So the names of the strings, the musical alphabet only goes up to G. There's no musical note H or I or anything after that. It's A through G. So what we're tuning the strings to are G, C, E, and A. That's the most common tuning for ukuleles nowadays. So the G string is going to be the string that's nearest your head. The A string is going to be the string that's nearest your feet. Now you can use whatever clever mnemonic device you want to memorize these, but you really want to memorize them right away. You pretty much have to tune your ukulele every single time you pick it up. Well, I shouldn't say every single time, every daily probably. But the more you play it, the more it goes out of tune. It's also just going to go out of tune from sitting there too. The strings, you know, they're somewhat elastic, so they're going to stretch a little bit in there. So, starting with the strings, the mnemonic devices, go over that quick. Use whatever you want to memorize them. These are just a few I've seen. Get crazy every afternoon. George Clooney eats apples. That's a favorite one. Good children eat asparagus. I guess they eat apples too. Or any fruit or vegetable you can think of that starts with A. Artichokes, maybe. So, going over tuning. If you have a tuner like this at home, don't be afraid to turn the pegs a little bit. I recommend, if you're tuning though, keep it away from your face. If you're new to tuning, you can tune to one string, but then if you keep going higher, you can tune to the same note in a higher pitch. And if you're accidentally doing that, there's a chance you could break the string. So if you're tuning it too high, you're cranking it, you could break the string. Don't be too afraid of doing that. Just pay attention to how tight it is on here. You want the string to flex a little bit. I know these strings are black, they're a little hard to see, but they should be a little loose. If it's getting really tight, you can listen, if you're listening to the pitch on this video too, you can try to match the pitches I'm playing. Okay, so main thing is keep it away from your face. You don't want it to split and hit your eye. That could cause an injury. So, looking at the tuner, when you play a note, we're starting with the note nearest your head, which is going to be G. If you look at it, this one is a little low. So it's saying G, that's the note we want it to read, but we want it to be right in the middle. So it's red and it's on the low side. The musicians say that's flat. If it's high, it's sharp. Starting out, you need to know that you want it in the middle. So you want to tune it, and you can watch it while you turn it. You want to turn it whichever way starts moving it up. Now, I never know which way to turn it. I don't remember it that way. I just do it until I either hear the pitch going up or I visually see that moving up. So if you start turning it one way and it's going down, then turn it the other way if you're trying to go up. Okay. So I'm almost there. And if I go a little too high, I just turn it back the opposite way. Okay. That's where I want it to be. That's G. So then we go to the next string, C. I'm going to turn that the same way I turned this. And I see that it's going up a little too high. Okay. Okay, that one is there. G, C. Good children. Eat. A little too high. Perfect. Right in the middle. That's where you want it. Now, if you have an older ukulele, sometimes the strings might slide a little bit. If they're sliding too much, that could mean your ukulele might need tune-up and you might need to bring it to a local music store. Hopefully it doesn't slide on you too much when you're tuning. These should be fairly tight. Okay, so I went through them all. Oops. And I always do it again, because with any instrument, once you get through tuning them all, once you're shifting all the other ones a lot, it can kind of throw the other ones out of whack. So you go through them all and then just check them all again real quick. G's still in place where it should be. Now I didn't have to move these too much because the tuning was pretty close. But if you were tuning one, if you're on the letter B and your string's supposed to be C, you just go up the alphabet. So if C is right next to B, so you have to go up to get to C. If you went down, you would get to A eventually. Alright, we're back to C. Okay. Went a little too high back. Okay, and then now that I moved that one a lot, it could have thrown the other ones out. Didn't throw out G. E is where it should be. C, just got to bring it up a little bit. E, A. So now it's tuned. The more you do that, the quicker it goes. It might take a long time to get tuning at the very beginning, but once you do it a few times, you start getting a knack for it. And as long as you don't touch the tuning pegs, they should be relatively close to where you need it to be. So hope that's helpful. We're going to move right along and get into playing chords, which is going to be the most rewarding part of playing the ukulele and where all the music happens. So stay tuned. Okay, before I go into showing you how to play these chords, it's important to talk about the parts of the ukulele and also how to hold it. Just so the parts, so you know what I'm talking about when I point to certain things. So if you're looking at the ukulele, there, it's black, so there's a better backdrop. This is the body. This is the head. This is the headstock. So if you're thinking about it as some kind of animal, like a long-necked bird or something, whatever works to remember the different parts of this. So body, neck, headstock, or just head. If you hear the word head, this is what we're talking about. Sound hole, that's where the sound comes out of. That's the hole in the body. These on the neck are the frets, the little metal parts going across. So if I say press on a fret, I don't mean to press on the fret itself, the metal part. What you're actually going to be pressing is right behind it, between the frets. So if you press on there, if you press on the metal part, you'll notice you're not getting good sound. If you press behind it, it rings out better. Okay, these are the tuning pegs. That's the main parts we're going to cover when we're talking about it. There's other parts, but we'll ignore those for now. And then holding the ukulele. Okay, so if you're right-handed, your left hand is going to be holding the neck. Opposite if you're left-handed. So whichever hand you're fretting with is going to be holding it up. Fretting means pushing on the strings. Your right hand, because I'm right-handed, is going to go over the ukulele. So I'll kind of sit up here so you can see better. This part of my arm is going to hold the ukulele in place. So you should be able to hold it without using a strap. You should be able to sit comfortably with your arms relaxed, your shoulders relaxed and back, and keeping it at an angle like this. Not straight out that way or not straight up in your face. Kind of at an angle like that. So this is holding it up and your other arm is holding it in place. And I use my pointer finger to strum the strings. So your pointer finger should be hitting these higher frets up here. So that's where you're strumming. Not over the sound hole, which is where most people think you're going to pick or strum. Your hand will probably land right about here. And that's where it's going to sound good to strum those strings and where it'll be comfortable. Okay, so now I'll go into some of the chords. You'll see on the screen your first chords are C, F, G, and I threw an A minor. The M sign means minor. All the other chords, C, F, and G, those are major chords. They just go by the letter name. So we won't talk about the quality of chords right now. What's important to know is just the chord shapes and their names. So chords can be intimidating because there's so many of them. But if you learn just these few basic shapes, you can play hundreds, if not thousands or more of songs. So learning C, F, and G is a great beginning place. And A minor, you'll learn even just a few more songs from there. So, playing the C chord, well, let's talk about the diagrams first. The diagrams you see on the screen are as if the ukulele you're holding it straight up. So, like that. So you're looking at the neck of the ukulele, And the lines going down, the vertical lines, up and down, are the strings. The lines going across on the grid is the frets. And the numbers you see in each chord are the finger you're going to use to push on the string. And the spot it's in is the fret and the string that you'll be pushing down. So you'll see the hand below shows you the numbering system for the ukulele. So your pointer finger is 1, middle is 2, ring is 3, pinky is 4. Now, with string instruments, it's always going to be that. Those are the numbers that they use. So, if you look at the C chord, the number on there is 3, so you'll be using your ring finger, okay? And the spot you'll be pushing is on the first string. The first string is the string nearest your feet. That's the A string. If you remember the names of the strings, good children eat asparagus. So that's A. And you'll be pushing on the 3rd fret. So you're holding the ukulele in the position we talked about. You're going to use your ring finger, your 3rd finger, to go to the 3rd fret on that first string, that A string, the string closest to your feet. And you're going to use the very tip of your finger to push down. Now I'm just playing that one note, but when you play the chord, you're playing all the strings. And you'll know that by looking at the diagram. Now it has empty circles behind the diagram, behind the neck, right under where the letter of the chord is, C. You see those empty circles. That means that you're playing those strings open. So you're strumming down on all these strings. You're not just picking one note. Because a chord is more than one note played at the same time. So technically it's 3 or more notes. What we need to know for the ukulele is it's multiple notes played at the same time. So chords are going to be most of what you're doing for ukulele. You're going to be learning chords and songs. You'll be doing some kind of melody stuff later on. You can pick out melodies. But what you'll be doing most of the time is chords. You strum these, and you can accompany yourself with your voice and sing along with what you're strumming. So going back to the C chord, your ring finger should be pushing on the first string on the 3rd fret. And you're using the very tip of your finger. You don't want to be pushing down like this, because that's going to get in the way of the other strings eventually. And your other fingers aren't as free to move around that way. When you learn to do it with your tips, that's the proper position. Because later on you're going to do other chord shapes too, where your other fingers might get in the way, where they're tight together. So you really need, well, that's not a real chord, but something like that. You're going to need to use the very tips of your fingers. So a tip, keep your fingernails, at least on your fretting hand, as short as possible. Because long fingernails are the enemy of the ukulele, at least on this hand. It might come in handy on your strumming hand. You can keep those a little long if you prefer. But keep these as short as possible. And you'll have more success playing these chords. Okay, so we have the C chord. You got your shape. So you're pushing down, like we just talked about. Very tip of your finger on the A string, 3rd fret. And then you use your right hand, or your strumming hand, to come down over that. And I'm just using the point of my finger. I'm hitting it with my fingernail. Almost like I'm just flicking the strings. You want to be relaxed, comfortable. It might feel awkward at first until you find that comfortable position. You kind of have to tell your body to be comfortable, because when you're trying to learn something new, it's so normal to just kind of tense up and focus intensely on what you're doing. but you got to tell your body to relax when you're doing this. So keep your shoulders back, nice and relaxed. You're just gently flicking that. And you can go down and practice up. Do it gently. You don't want to dig into it and get your finger caught. Just nice and gently. Try to get a feel for going up and down. Or just down. Some of the exercises we do with strumming patterns will be just down at first, but we're going to incorporate up too, and that you're going to be using the point of your finger, the fleshier part, not the fingernail. So you should hear all those notes nice and clearly in that chord. If you need to check it on any chord, you can go through and pick each note out of that chord. There we go. I just kind of fixed that one. To make sure that they're all sounding nice and clearly. Okay, so that's our C chord. Now let's look at the F chord. So looking at the diagram again, you're using your first and second finger, your pointer and your middle. And I also see two empty circles, so there's going to be a couple open strings in there where you're playing those without pushing anything on, without pushing your fingers on them. So let's start with our first finger. It's easy to just go through numerically, starting with 1, 2, and going up. So start with your first finger, and it's going to be going on the E string. Good children eat, George Clooney eats. So that is the second string from your feet. So you'll use your first finger on the first fret of the E string. Or I might also call it the second string. When I talk about the numbers of the strings, it's from the bottom up. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 strings, but when we talk about the first string, it's the one nearest your feet. So first finger, first fret. That's not the full chord, but okay. So we got that in place. Very tip of your finger. Second finger, your middle finger, will go on the second fret and the fourth string, the string nearest your head. And that's the G string. Okay, so you have a shape that looks like this. It's easier to see on the diagram, but your fingers should look somewhat like mine on the neck of the ukulele. Okay. Now this is going to take some practice. It's going to be a little clumsy at first in getting your fingers used to these. You kind of have to keep training it, getting your fingers, the very tips. And you have to keep going through, because you'll notice that you might not be getting all the notes sounding clearly at first. You might be getting some that are kind of sounding like that or like that. Then you have to look at your finger position and make sure that, because you're using the tips of your fingers, you're trying to make sure that the other strings are really open, that your finger isn't accidentally touching the other string. That's when you start getting that muted sound like that. You want tips of your fingers and just strumming through each of those notes, making sure that each is loud and clear. Now it's going to take practice. Going back and forth between these shapes is the very first phase of learning the ukulele. You're just learning these shapes and you're trying to go back and forth between these chords. You'll want them memorized, and the more you're trying these shapes, the more you're committing it to muscle memory, so your fingers are going to know where to go eventually, that you won't have to think about it. So, working on these chords is going to be your first steps to learning how to play songs. You have to be able to play these chords comfortably. And I'll talk about practice routines in a moment too. But now I want to move on to the G chord. This one's trickier because it uses 3 fingers. You'll see it does a little triangle shape. So you got your first finger, second finger, and third finger. Your pointer, middle, and ring finger. And we'll start with your first finger. It's going on the E string, the 3rd string, and it's going on the 2nd fret. Okay, your second finger is on the 1st string, the A string, and it's also on the 2nd fret. So you'll have them both, they're on the same frets, but different strings. Okay, then your 3rd finger will go on the 2nd string and the 3rd fret. So now you have this little triangle shape. These 2 are straight up and down on the frets, and then your 3rd finger is on the next fret over. Very tips of your fingers. And then you strum through each of those. Because you have that open string too, which is the 4th string. Again, you're making sure you have the very tips of your fingers and that they're not touching any other strings, or that they're not on top of the frets. They're right behind the frets. Then you strum nice and gently with your finger, nice and relaxed. And you have your G chord. Now, like I said, thousands of songs use just those 3 chords, C, F, and G. I threw in the A minor because that'll teach you even more songs, and that is a pretty simple chord, relatively. I mean, it's as easy as the C chord. It's using 1 finger. So you have your 2nd finger. Okay? So when you're working on these chords, you're doing all that troubleshooting. Once you have them memorized, you'll want to try to go back and forth between some of them. This is the very first part of learning any songs. You have to learn these chords. And then next, for the next lesson, we'll look at different strumming exercises you can do. For now, you just want to make sure you can get and play each of these chords relatively clearly. Okay? Now, you might not be doing the strumming exercises, but you might just be doing something like that, going back and forth. And like I said, it's going to be a little clumsy at first. You're training your hands, your fingers. If you've never played a string instrument, you're training your fingers to do something completely new. So it really just takes picking it up every day and doing it a little bit. I'd put the ukulele somewhere where you're going to see it often. That's like any instrument. We had a keyboard set up, and I wasn't practicing keyboard at all until I had it set up in our living room. And then walking by it every single day just made me play around with it like in 10-minute or 15-minute increments. So if you have this somewhere easy within your reach and these chords laid out, or once you have them memorized, then all you have to do is, pick it up, play it 10, 15 minutes a day starting out. More is great, but don't feel like you need to. I mean, if you get frustrated with it, put it down. But 10 minutes of just trying these different shapes each day is going to get you in good shape for learning more. And there's more to come. I hope you enjoyed this first lesson. Again, there will be more to come, so stay tuned and enjoy. Bye.